Okay, so for our first set of notes, we're going to talk about DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. And first, we must remember every cell contains genetic material in the form of DNA, whether prokaryotic or eukaryotic. In eukaryotic cells, the DNA is contained within a singular and circular chromosome, and it's exposed to the rest of the cell. So here we have our prokaryotic cell, our bacteria, and inside will just be the single chromosome, all coiled into itself. In eukaryotes, like us and plants, the nucleus contains the genetic material of the cell, also in the form of DNA. And while only eukaryotes keep their DNA in a nucleus, it is important to understand that every cell uses DNA. So here we have our nucleus, and inside will be the chromosomes with DNA. So remember, DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. And remember, a nucleic acid is just a long repeating chain of nucleotides. Nucleotides would be the monomer, or the basic molecule for a nucleic acid. Here we have an example of a nucleic acid right there. So for every nucleotide, you have three basic parts. The first part is a phosphate group, and we can show it here. The next part is a sugar called deoxyribose. And then the last part, the really important part, is the nitrogen base, which we see here. So there are 4 nitrogen bases in DNA. We have adenine, we have thymine, guanine, and cytosine. And we put them into 2 different categories. We have the purines because they have 2 rings, and then the pyrimidines, they're only 1 ring. So why do we think we call these nitrogen bases? So let's look at the structures. So if you guess because they all contain nitrogen, the element, you are correct. So here we have some drawings and diagrams of DNA, and you can see that there are 2 chains of nucleic acids joined together to form that double-stranded molecule of DNA. So you always have 2 strands. These 2 strands, they spiral around each other or around one another, and they create this shape called a double helix. So the outside of the DNA is called the sugar phosphate backbone, and that's there. And this, what the function is, it gives the DNA its shape and structure. The inside, the nitrogen bases will be in there. So in the inside, we have our nitrogen bases, and they're here. And what they do is, that's how the information is coded into the DNA. So the information in DNA is a blueprint for every cell, and this information is found in the sequence of nitrogen bases. So this information is used to make proteins according to the universal genetic code. So the sequence of these nitrogen bases is what gives us our subtle differences. Even though we are humans, we will have 99.9% of the genetic code that is exactly alike. But these differences cause us to be different. So you will have a point something percent that is different and causes you to be who you are. So every cell uses the information in DNA to make proteins in the same way. The DNA is translated using the genetic code, where a specific sequence of nitrogen base codes for an amino acid in the protein being made. So we have here a section of mRNA, which is something we'll discuss later, but every 3 letters will give us amino acid. So AUG gave us methionine, AAA gave us lysine, UCA gave us serine, and UUG gave us leucine. And remember, all living things will use the same genetic code, whether it's bacteria, plant, fungi, humans. We all use this genetic code. So here's a little rhyme for you to remember. So the genetic code is common to all, from the fish in the sea to the mold on the wall. So DNA is not found in many little pieces. Instead, it's in large amounts of DNA that are packed together into something called chromosomes. Human cells will hold 46 chromosomes, but they contain thousands of genes. And the complete set of chromosomes with all the organism's DNA is known as its genome. So genes are the section of DNA that are used to make proteins in the cell. So here we might have just the whole DNA, and then in the chromosome, and we'll just take a section of it, and then we will get that information for whatever protein the cell needs. So DNA base pairing, the nitrogen bases between the two strands of DNA pair together in a very, very specific way. So A pairs with T, adenine pairs with thymine, and G pairs with C, guanine pairs with cytosine. Again, here's one way to remember. So compare the letters in each pair, and how can you remember that these go together? A pairs with T and G pairs with C. So the letters made with straight lines go together, and the letters made with curved lines go together. So we have concluded our notes for today. Make sure you wrote everything that was in red and green. We might have you add a little bit more during class on Tuesday, so we will see you then. Thank you.